strategy for the city. The session's going to be recorded so that people that can't attend can watch again, and make sure everyone gets to hear Carly's brilliant presentation. So we're hearing from Carly today, who's the nighttime advisor at Bristol City Council. My name's Elise and I'm the Arts Development Manager at Bristol City Council. Just accepting, Carly, your transcribe. Okay, we're not going to do individual introductions. We're going to, just omitting someone. If anyone has their mic on for whatever reason, if I mute you, please don't take it personally. It's just to make sure that the sound is right for whoever's presenting or speaking. Carly's going to do a presentation around the amazing work that she's doing with the sector, nighttime sector. And then we're going to have a chance for questions. I'm assuming, Carly, that you'll want to do your presentation and then have questions rather than questions throughout. And if you can hold your questions in the chat until after Carly's presented too, because Teams is tricky, it pops up with the questions as you're presenting it. It's quite hard. So if you could hold on to your questions until after Carly's presented, and then we can all have a discussion. If you want to turn your camera off, I'll just say one more thing, Carly, and then you can get started. If you want to turn your camera off, that's absolutely fine. Do whatever you need to do to feel comfortable in this meeting. We'll hear from Carly and then we'll have some questions. Thanks, Carly.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. I am looking forward to talking to you guys about some of our plans around the Bristol Music Fund. We published A Ticket to the Future back in November. Can everybody see the presentation first of all, before I just steamroller in?
Yes.
We published A Ticket to the Future back in November in 2024. So some of you may be familiar with what our plans are, what our proposals are, but I've kind of reformatted this in terms of a presentation for you guys so that I've pulled out some of the threads of detail that questions have been asked to me as I've been presenting this to various different stakeholders. So first of all, hello, for those of you that I've not met, which I'm not sure who that is. My name's Carly Heath. I'm the Nighttime Economy Advisor at Bristol City Council. My job is to represent the city from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And I work somewhere between, I'm paid for by public health, I live in economic development, but I wear lots of different hats. So lots of the work that I do spans a lot of different areas when we're thinking about the night. This specifically, we're going to be talking about the Bristol Music Fund and the kind of cultural life of the city at night. But as many of you will know, my work spans into lots of different areas. So before we start, I was just wondering if I could just get from you guys, when you're thinking about nightlife or nightlife culture, if you wouldn't mind just like maybe popping into the chat, what parts of our nightlife, Bristol's nightlife, our culture and our community creativity that happens after dark, do you think deserves more visibility or protection or celebration when we're thinking about that kind of wider cultural conversation? Does that question make sense? Yeah. Grassroots music. Live music. Sarah, when you say live music, club culture, that was the next thing I was looking for. Keeping independent venues alive, electronic dance music, clubs, independent venues, businesses, independent venues. We love an independent venue, small independent venues, my favourite. Any more for any more? venues, including theatres, concert halls, dance. So I think probably the thing that I would add into this is actually the kind of people that actually make nightlife happen as well. So yeah, is it accessing music for disadvantaged communities, going to events, but also learning to play music, getting involved in the nighttime economy? I would also consider our city's promoters, our event organisers, the people behind the scenes that make stuff happen, the record labels, the the kind of creativity that sort of surrounds music, and of course, the artists that are on the stage, the DJs, the performers, those people that are kind of pushing things forward. Bars, cafes, restaurants also key to the wider support of nighttime economy. Absolutely. And training and creation spaces. Is that training? Fab. So all of the work that I do at Bristol City Council lives underneath the umbrella of Bristol Nights. I am really hoping that these Bristol rules are familiar to you, because we've been plastering them over the city for the last, I think it's going to be our 5th September, this September. Bristol Nights, we call Bristol Nights a citywide nightlife community, in that it's about celebrating the people that make the nightlife happen, make nightlife thrive. And the work that we do underneath the Bristol Nights umbrella is a partnership project that involves the business improvement districts. I see Vicky in here, the universities, the student unions, working with Arts Council or WECA or Avon and Somerset Police, to try and help improve the working environment and the social life of the city. Lots of the work that we've done so far has been with public health outcomes. So the Bristol Rules, I'm hoping are very familiar. We launched a Women's Safety Charter in 2022, I want to say. And we've now trained over 600 nightlife staff to take a zero tolerance to harassment in night spaces. And that's harassment of all protected characteristics, whilst it's underneath the umbrella of women's safety. That's racism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, all of those things that we don't want to be happening in our city's gathering spaces. How can we actually support nightlife to be able to look after our citizens as they navigate in the city after dark? Thrive at Night is our mental health and wellbeing programme. We've got lots of really fantastic guidance around creating mentally healthy workplaces. It's the sort of advice, it isn't the sort of advice about why don't you go for a walk at lunchtime, because if your lunchtime is at 1 o'clock in the morning in the middle of a trading estate, then that's pretty insensitive advice. It's not advice like get more sleep. Instead, it's more about there are 7 types of rest that everybody needs. Our Thrive at Night materials are absolutely fantastic, whether you're running an organisation that operates in the day or the night. With that, we've done lots of in-person training. We've got materials that are available for both managers in terms of making creative, mentally healthy workplaces, but we've also got a workbook for workers themselves to think about how they can reduce workplace anxiety, not just in the workplace, but also in their wider life. Our harm reduction work was the start of Bristol being able to call itself the UK's first harm reduction city. We've got some really great materials around that, and a fantastic partnership with both universities, both student unions and Bristol Drugs Project. We're about to do a nationwide pilot around our harm reduction work, and Bristol really is spearheading that work nationally. And lots of people are looking to the stuff that we're able to do as a citywide partnership on kind of improving the conversation around substance use and alcohol, and the unintended harms that come with that. Drink spiking we were one of the first cities in the UK to do anything about drink spiking. It was a collaboratively designed project with Business Improvement District and City Centre Business Improvement District and Avon and Somerset Police. We're now behind 260 bars in the city. We've got testing kits behind the bar, so if you suspect your drink's been spiked, then you can go straight to the bar and get your kit tested there and then. And that really is a coordinated, joined up approach between all of those partners, between Bristol City Council, the police and Avon and Bristol City Centre BID. And it's just really good demonstration around actually how, when a city works together, thinking about what happens after dark, we can really change the narrative around what a great nightlife can do and how we can support our workforce. So I just kind of wanted to talk you through some of the stuff that we've done in the past before kind of moving on to the Bristol Music Fund proposals, because everything that we do is collaboratively designed. We always make sure that we engage with the city and really sort of try and solve challenging problems together, if that makes sense. Everything's freely available on the website. If you want any materials, just let me know. I'm always happy to share and forward them on and talk to anybody about these sorts of things. But in terms of the nighttime economy in Bristol, when we're thinking about the city from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., 41% of Bristol's jobs are actually after dark. That's 116,000 people. So that's not just pubs, clubs, bars, restaurants and students falling out, kebab shops at 3 o'clock in the morning. Health and social care is one of our largest sectors when we're thinking about nighttime. You know, hospitals don't stop at night. We've got a 24-hour port, logistics, 24-hour call centres, late night retail, all of those sorts of things are within the mix, which is why things like Thrive at Night are so important, because so many of our workforce actually work after dark. A large portion of this is in the nighttime culture and leisure sector. So that's about 36.7 thousand people that work in Bristol between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. in our fantastic cultural sector. Our nighttime economy could exceed £20 million annually, and visa spending in the city centre, BS1, BS2 and BS8, brought in 74.5 million in 2023. So this is a significant contributor to the city's wealth and to the city's economy. Nationally, the nighttime economy is the 5th largest industry. But also nationally, we lost 16% of grassroots music venues in the last year. So the cultural glue that holds nightlife together, the country is hemorrhaging venues. Bristol has post-pandemic fared better, but we have been seeing quite a few venues closing in the last year, and it's mostly due to economics, cost, and of course the city changing around us and redevelopment. So the stuff around the Bristol Music Fund, the proposals around the Bristol Music Fund, after we've talked about women's safety, mental health and well-being, harm reduction, all of those kinds of things, the Bristol Knights Advisory Board sort of came to me with a question saying, well, how do we do the same about music? So the first thing that we did is we sat around a massive table in City Hall. About over 70 different organisations attended on a really super hot day in September 2023, and we were there to really discuss some of the challenges behind the music industry in the city and think about it not necessarily just as those venues that are on the high streets, but also that wider economic ecology that sits around music. So the promoters, the performers, the record labels, the people that make that show happen. We discussed some of the challenges, and we talked about what if Bristol was to create a Bristol Music Fund that was created by Bristol and for Bristol. What does it need to do? The first thing that we came up with are these guiding principles. Now I'm going to share these with you, so I'm not going to read everything out on all of these slides. I will share them with you so that you can have a good look through them. But what these guiding principles enabled us to do was to use them as our North Star as we made the decisions, as we discussed the decisions through the process that we went through, which was really super highly collaborative. the kind of main things that really kept on coming back to time and time again was that it was fair and transparent, that it really thought about the future, that it was representative of Bristol, Bristol sound, Bristol music, Bristol musicians, Bristol venues, and the thing that made us us. That it really actually supported music to be able to support itself. And crucially is that it was self-sustaining, so that when anything that we put into place isn't that kind of like grant funding that is like spend it once it's gone and everybody's fighting for the same part of the pie, and that it's something that actually, if the music industry can get together behind something like this, it's something that we own and we can continue. The better we do, the better the fund can do. So the first thing that we did was actually take a look at the music industry in Bristol, because I've been here to 20 years. I've been putting on events since 2004 in Bristol. And I don't remember anybody ever even really looking at the economics of the music industry. So Arts Council supported us in the feasibility study. We were supported by PRD, who did the cultural investment talk the other week. What was that talk about? But looking at different forms of funding, cultural funding. Mary Helen Young was one of the consultants that worked with us on this. The first thing that we discovered is that Bristol music tickets just tickets alone, generate between £42 million and £70 million every single year for the cultural economy in the city. That's just tickets. So that's not spend over the bar. That's not taxis and haircuts and you know the wider kind of economic impact. That's literally just the music tickets in terms of how events happen. In the licensing data at the time, it looked like we had 12 live music venues and 27 nightclubs. We actually have over 120 venues that program music events. We have over 200 outdoor events every single year that the Bristol City Council helps to facilitate. And over the course of the year, we have over 8,000 paid events and 2,500 free music events that happen throughout the city. So actually we're in a really, really good state when it comes to the amount of music events and music culture that happens in the city. But the way in which that money is spread isn't fair. It's not even, it's not distributed. So of our venue estate, 78% of our venues are under 1,000 capacity. And these are the people that are putting on those paid events. So the small music venues, those independent promoters, the grassroots artists, they really are doing a hell of a lot of work when it comes to the kind of cultural life within the city. But these venues are only bringing in 32% of the revenue. So they're doing the lion's share of the work and they're bringing in the smallest part of the pie. And it really demonstrates actually like why there's such a critical economics problem when it comes to that smaller grassroots music industry, in that it's really, really hard to make any money for a whole range of different reasons. Our proposals were looking at what would happen if we were to put a ticket levy onto all music tickets in the city. So what we're proposing is we put a 1% fee on tickets, on all music tickets in the city. This would be paid for by the customer, not by the artist, the venue, or the promoter. We don't want to limit their ability to be able to continue to turn a profit. But if it's a £5 ticket, it's 5p, £50 ticket, 50p, and scales all the way across the music economy within the city. If we're successful, we could raise between 400,000 and £1 million every single year to invest in Bristol music. Now, from that first round table that we had, only like 85% of the people that had attended that first round table back in September 2023 had ever received any kind of public funding. So this kind of self-sustaining funding for the city's music scene would be transformative, especially for those people at that much, much smaller, lower edge where it's really difficult to take creative risk. We've proposed 4 pillars of support, and those pillars would be the venues, the space within where the music happens, events themselves, so the music activity or the performance, supporting those promoters that are doing the A&R and the creative development, music making, supporting artists in their careers, how music is created, And then a foundational support. So that's supporting the wider music ecosystem, talent development, career development, promoting Bristol's music, and a whole range of other different activities that could happen within that money. We, as part of the working group, somebody suggested that we should ask the audience, because what happens if the audience would hate it? So we did a Bristol audience survey. Over 500 people responded. That's a statistically reliable amount of people for the amount of people who live in Bristol. 93 of them, 93% of them, not 93 of them, that's wrong. 93% of them would be happy to pay 1% on top of their ticket to support the Bristol, to support the local music scene. And interestingly, 96% said that an extra 1% would have no effect, or would even make them more likely to buy a ticket if they knew that some of their money was going towards supporting Bristol's music. So how do we do that? What we're proposing is that we create a community benefit society for where the money lives and how it is looked after. With a community benefit society, what that means is it's going to be owned by Bristol's music's community. So it's actually owned by the community itself, and they will get a say in the future and how the future of the fund develops. What's lovely about the community benefit society structure is it's one member, one vote. So it doesn't matter what size organization you are, whether you're huge and massive or teeny tiny, you get the same amount of say and in shaping what the Bristol Music Fund can get to support. I've got a bit of information in this deck around what a community benefit society actually is. The key features that's really worth knowing is that it's a type of organisation that is regulated by the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority. So good governance is really hard baked into the type of organisation that it is. It can also be registered as a charity, so then gets charitable aims. But really, it's about making sure that it serves the common good and the wider community of Bristol that surrounds music. And I've got some information in this deck that I'll share with you about like those sort of key features of what a community benefit society is. I'm not going to read all of these things out. The lovely thing about our proposals is that the 1% is just really the tip of the iceberg. If we can create this community benefit society, it's got equality, democracy, social value, good governance really hard baked into the organisation. But as that type of organisation, the Bristol Music Fund would be eligible for all sorts of different fundings that can then go on to support culture in the city. So philanthropic and trust funding, brand partnerships, community share offers where actually the community can own part of the Bristol Music Fund itself, public sector match funding, earned income, and more and more and more. So the 1% from those tickets actually is that it would be the foundation, and we would be able to increase that as the organisation continues on. There was lots of ideas amongst the working group of the sort of things that the venue could support. I'm not going to read all of these out, but really it's actually like what are the things that venues need? What are the things that we need within events to actually make sure that we're continuing to take that creative risk and develop new talent and find the next Idols, Tricky, Massive Attack, Ronnie Size, those people that those musicians that Bristol's always so proud of. If we're not looking after midweek, then how are we going to make sure that we've got those people within the future, within our music industry in the future? And within that foundational thing, it's actually really about making sure that people have got a good sustainable outcomes when it comes to working in the music industry in the city, that we're not losing them to Manchester and London or to other sectors, that we're able to keep them in the city. So I realise I've babbled on and on about this, and I can talk forever. I've got some slides next that's actually about what we're planning to do next. But I just wondered if anybody has any questions at this point on what the proposals are. We're all very quiet.
No questions, but it sounds great.
Fab. Okay, I will continue forward. So our plans for I'm now calling it the roadmap for the future, because I do love a little catchphrase. How we can continue to harness this spirit of the collective imagination of people coming together to sort of plan together and imagine a different future for music in the city. So all of the phases that we've got planned out over the next however long it takes us to get there, really continue to embed the creative and cultural community into the decision making within every phrase, but making sure that we've got really good governance hard baked into it, so that in 20 years' time, when the Bristol Music Fund has been up and running for a really long time, actually, what are the decisions that we're making now that will look after that music industry in the future? The phased roadmap, the bit that we're in the middle of at the moment, is that this first phase is about stakeholder strategy in the first funding bids. We're pulling together kind of some working groups, making sure that we're making sure that we're like really forecasting it properly and estimating it and budgeting it, and making sure that actually we can get the funding around it to make this whole thing happen. This part of the phase is actually about the work we need to do to create the Community Benefit Society itself, and this is the bit that Bristol City Council will be supporting on, hopefully supporting on, but we're working with a number of different partners to try and do this. All of these within the foundations and culture setting, the community conversations and eco listening, that's actually about going back out into the community and making sure that we've really got the essence of what it needs to do hard baked into it before we even press go on anything. Once we've got the answer to that, we'll go into a co-design sprint series, and this will be through working groups, actually, about how do we define what the Community Benefit Society model is, the membership terms, the governance things, the share offer. We'll make sure that it's all decided up front before we launch. There's some technical exploration that needs to happen, like how do we get that 1% from ticketing companies into a bank account, like what is the benchmarking we need to do, what are those systems that we need to make sure we're mapping, but also making sure that we're supporting the sector with the right tools that they need to communicate to their bookers, to their artists, to their promoters, to their audiences, about how we can actually onboard the city as we press launch to start collecting that 1%. And then within that Community Benefit Society and launch plan, it's actually like, how do we make sure that we really do get to make this moment that the city can truly celebrate, that belongs to all of us. Once we've launched, we can start collecting those 1%. We can open a share offer and onboard members outside of the music industry, people that just love the scene. The working group, the fund activation, will actually be designed by artists themselves. So if we've already got the matrix on how the decisions need to be made, can we make the process of applying joyful and not being the soul crushing experience of arts funding, as one person described it to me. The first funding launching, making sure that we're reflecting and adapting and evaluating all the time as we go along. And really within this is actually looking at that long-term cultural stewardship, making sure that we are training our next leaders. A rising tide lifts all ships. So how can the Bristol Music Fund make sure that we are elevating the music industry in all corners, but also bringing people up with us? So all of that's kind of like hard baked into it at the moment. Sarah, I'll come back to your question in a sec. So these are all of the phases of the things that we need to make happen. There is a hell of a lot of work to happen here, and I'm going to be talking about this, I think, forevermore. One of the things that we are doing is we're looking at working with a university partner to come on as a learning partner to help us evaluate and work with us as we're going along, to make sure that we're kind of also capturing our story, and at the end of this really making a toolkit, like a framework that other cities and other creative industries can learn from and be inspired by, find the Bristol model, that we're so great at working together, and how can other people do it, and publish our workings. We've got to share this learning so that other people can benefit from it. there's lots of things here around actually the impact that we're trying to do. So by it, like we're really thinking super long term here, and through it being self-sustaining and community generated, longevity really is hard baked into it. We're taking our time, we're going slowly, we're asking questions, so that actually it does have time to breathe. We solve a lot of the challenges as we're going along, and we solve them collectively. So here's some questions that I would like us to try and reflect on, or for you guys to try and reflect on as the cultural strategy is being shaped, and to really sort of think about how the cultural strategy can support music, nightlife, that community-led culture, DIY culture. A lot of nightlife happens through people just getting together and going, I've got a great idea, let's make this happen. How can we do more of that in the city and kind of honor the midweek creatives that create the scenes of the future? Really sort of resonating on the people, places and practices that need that support to make that happen. Like, where is the hidden corners? How can we help resource them? How can the cultural strategy really like lean into that outside of just the work that we're doing with the Bristol Music Fund, but kind of making sure that we're all aligned to this vision? When we're thinking about something that's fair and transparent or future facing, like, what are the practices or ideas that really need support, and how can our cohorts make sure we're doing that? And also kind of a question really, like, where do you see the Bristol Music Fund within that one city vision and within the cultural strategy? So up for discussion. How's that?
Thanks, Carly. Amazing work and brilliant questions for us to start the conversation. Do you want to cut and paste those questions into the chat, and then we could start sharing the presentation so we can all see each other? Is that all right?
Sure. I've got 2 more slides, but
sorry.
I'll come back. No,
Apologies.
I'll come back to
I thought
sharing
that was
them.
your crescendo.
I'll come back to sharing them once we've had a discussion. I don't know how to turn it off.
Don't worry, just carry on. I jumped in too soon.
I'll stop sharing. There we go. Now I can see your faces. There we go.
Great. Thanks, Carly.
Oh, it's really shouty. Hang on a minute. Can I do that smaller?
To say what Phil put in the chat, well considered, well researched, and evidenced the need. Amazing opportunity for driving investment in the sector. And Sarah, did you want to come in with your question now? You put in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Carly. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've heard quite a lot of the presentation before, but it always blows me away about how innovative and trailblazing it is in terms of the Bristol Music Fund. And as you know, we're really keen to support it, the combined authority. So my question was, it's sort of aligned to what you were saying, but it was really about your understanding around the skills needs and skills gaps. I'm thinking particularly for the sort of creative and cultural nighttime economy workforce. I think there's opportunities through some of the combined authority devolved funding, such as skills boot camps funding, to support that in the future. But what we need is evidence, and we need to know where the gaps are. So yeah, I just thought if you had any reflections on that, it'd be really interesting to hear.
So it completely depends who you're talking to, and it also depends kind of where in the career pathway people are. And I could do a whole hour just probably talking just about that. Sarah, all of the conversations that we've had, we've captured all of the conversations. We have all of that information. So I'll be happy to share those, like happy to dig them out and share them with you. I mean, from venues, you know, like in terms of actually how can we become more economically sustainable? How can we make sure that we're, you know, like nobody gets taught how to be a leader in nightlife, you know, like I know so many people that started glass collecting at like 16 and ended up running a pub by the time they were 22. You know, like you're just good at your job, you turn up, you're good at it, and you do it again. And that's often how people find their way up through the nightlife sector. So like lots of the work that we do around Bristol Nights is also about trying to support that kind of stuff. There's promoters that didn't know what a profit and loss was until the first time they lost money. I'm somebody that has lost my rent putting on parties more times than I care to admit. You know, and even when you put on parties that have got like 80% of the people in the room and there's no 2 feet on the floor at any point in time, it's still incredibly hard to lose money on those things. I can see Tom sticking his hand up, and I wonder whether actually he's got a really good answer to this, because I know they do a lot of work with this with Big Team Production, Big Team CIC.
Thanks, Carly. Yeah, as a fellow promoter who often lost their rent from month to month, I definitely sympathise with you. Yeah, I mean, I've got a bit of musings and a bit of answers, but I've been, as you probably, well, Carly, you'll know, but others may not. I've kind of been reflecting a lot this weekend over Motion. I first got involved in Motion in 2008. I was kind of the original venue, or the first official venue manager there. And I think I saw everything you've been talking about, Carly, like firsthand at Motion, and what an amazing kind of space and I think it was, from it becoming a skate park, you know, it would being a skate park, a BMX park, up to becoming a club, and the whole grassroots it's event that it was, basically, where, you know, you had kind of young boys and girls that were like skaters and stuff, kind of getting involved in like glass collecting, rubbish, you know, picking up rubbish, putting ramps back together. None of us knew what we were doing when we started it. We had no idea, and you know, but what happened is this kind of glorious thing happened whereby everyone came together and learn on the ground, and it led to this real kind of like funnel of like real success from, like, you know, national promoters, musicians, DJs, managers, but also crucially, I think it was like people became you know, they learned accounts, they went off and did accounts, they became accountants, they learned health and safety, they came up and ended up working for people like Tess and going around the world doing health and safety. You know, sound engineers, lighting engineers, everything. It was real. It was just, and I saw everything you were talking about firsthand, in a kind of, and so I truly believe in everything you're saying, and actually how important it can be, and if it's done right, and if you could make this on a bigger scale throughout multiple venues supported by Bristol Knights. So yeah, just fully supportive of it, and I really do think it'll work as well. And crucially, I think, relating all back to this, a lot of these people that started with us were kids, and they maybe didn't finish school, or they didn't go on to higher education, or they kind of got drawn in, funnily enough, because of this weird world where it was BMX and scooters and stuff like that. You know, these two worlds collided, and it really did set people on professional paths. So it was really interesting from that point of view. So yeah, what we're doing at Big Team is a CIC we've set up as well, which is very much was a reflection of us looking at our own organization back in 2018, 2019, seeing that we had basically spent years employing our mates that we met on the festival circuits, and those mates were disproportionately white and disproportionately middle class, because they were the people that could afford initially to work for free and bumble around all summer at festivals. And we were like, okay, we're part of the problem here. So what we did is we set up Big Team CIC, and it was specifically with trying to open up these barriers and open up these ways into the industry for people that are outside our networks. We, you know, after a lot of learning through failing, I think we've got some good momentum now. We've got kind of 3, you know, permanent employees that work on it. They're creating a co-leadership model themselves, and we do these worlds where we kind of start with the outreach, by going out to communities and actually building those relationships. Then we do opportunities. Then we've got creative pathways, as well as kind of employment pathways, and then we also do a networking. So these kind of 4 pillars, basically, and we try and combine all of them together just to try and keep feeding people into the industry and into the economy. That, you know, it might not be for everyone, but, you know, the people that actually connect with it and go, yeah, this is for me, can then get involved. And so I think with one eye on what Bristol Knights can do, and what this initiative can do is along those lines, those kind of start those relationships, get people in to get experience, paid experience, crucially, because that's one of the biggest barriers. And then people then will, either connect with it and go, yeah, this is for me, or people won't. But, for all those that do connect with it, you've opened up those pathways, and those grafters will get in there, and they'll make their way up the chain, basically.
Yeah, I mean, Tom, I was getting tingled just thinking about those early days of Motion. Like, as you know, I spent many thousands of hours standing outside at 3 o'clock in the morning handing out the flyers for the first In Motion. But like lots of that team came from Native and Tube, which was like, I can't remember the capacity of Tube. Native was a 200 capacity venue.
180, yeah.
180, so actually Motion was born out of really super tiny venues, and it was homegrown born, which is really, really hard to do, increasingly harder to do in 2025 post-pandemic. And just also reflecting on the kind of creative industries that surround the music industry, the amount of people that I know were the designers of the flyers that are now working for Adidas and Nike and massive global brands, the amount of people that just started actually handing out flyers outside clubs and then decided to take photos and then moved into film and have now got production companies, like the amount of people that started off making outfits for people to wear on stage and are now like fashion designers and have got their own organizations and things like that. So the amount of, it's like the gathering spaces around music is more than just the connectivity and the dancing on the dance floor, which of course is something that I fully champion. But the ability for people to be able to meet each other outside of those formalized working environments, outside of those kind of network environments, and just literally roll your sleeves up and be like, this is me. I want to make something happen. I want to create this vibe. I want to be in this. Those opportunities open in a city like Bristol. Other cities are not like that in a similar kind of way, but that connectivity and the ability, the way in which that people bring people in and pull people up, is a very unique part of our nightlife culture, and definitely is something I've always championed being celebrated more. Elise.
Yeah, I was just going to come in and say, I feel like Tom answered one of your questions. Like, how can music and all the work that you've been talking about be highlighted in the strategy? What you just described, Tom, is an amazing case study of, a homegrown company coming up through all these different venues in the ecology, creating something really exciting, and then looking in on itself and then saying we need to do things differently. That's a really exciting case study. For people to look into Bristol, but also for Bristol to look at itself and think about how brilliant, amazing work we're doing. I think that would be great. So instead of the strategy trying to tell a story for Bristol, the Bristol people that are making culture happen, telling the story, and the aspirations for culture and what we want for the future. I think that'd be really great. But Sarah, did you want to come in on that? You're okay. Great. Wim.
I want to add something onto the Team Love story as well, because I remember when Tom was working in Arc Bar probably, and Dave was just running a record label and putting on parties, and the city gave them a chance with the first See No Evil festival to take over Nelson Street, artwork that we still is part of our placemaking and identity now. And that was another one of those moments that really brought all of those different creative communities together, counterculture, DIY scenes, and for a nominally small investment on behalf of the public, public funding, the amount of stuff that happened out of that moment, amount of organizations that came together and was just like, yes, we could do this, we got given a chance, has actually been transformative to the city. And you can see it still now, not just Team Love, there's loads of other organizations that sort of started on that weekend. So there's, we've got really good examples of how to do it well in Bristol.
I did my first big piece of artwork as part of that when I was an artist, so knitted graffiti. So yeah, seeded lots for lots of people. Wim.
Hi, brilliant strategy, Kelly. I think it sounds great. I'm fully supportive of it. And just sort of following on from Tom, really, a little bit in the idea of the sort of opportunities that maybe people had 20 years ago that I feel like maybe are not there anymore. I think, when you're talking about what needs to be resourced, or what people, places, or need support. The thing that I'm really aware of at the moment, that's partly through my journey with the Invisible Circus, but also other organisations that I'm a part of, is the opportunity for opening new spaces at a time when we're losing venues left, right, and centre with the sort of development of the city. There just isn't the same opportunity that there was 20 years ago. When we arrived here, there was so many empty spaces and a really supportive council. The sort of on meanwhile use just gave us a really good opportunity to take on empty buildings, and even you use Motion as an example. Like, where is there in the city centre now a warehouse that you could take on and run for 15 years as a venue on that scale? How do we, or what do you think that we need to be doing to be able to make new spaces to make up for the ones that we're losing at the same time? Because I think the support for the ones that there's great, but what's made Bristol such a hotbed over the last however many years is having the spaces where people can not just show work but create work, and I'm really aware at the moment that the actual spaces for creating and showing work are becoming less and less, and the opportunities to make new ones don't seem to be reappearing. And as the city changes and gentrification takes hold, like, what can we do as a city to make sure that we are providing like space for new talent to have opportunities to create and show their work? So yeah, I guess it's a bit of a question that I'm sort of asking myself, but also I think it's something that, we talk about supporting what's here now, but everyone here is also really aware that we're losing a lot of our cultural assets at hand over fist at the same time. Like, what do we do? The artists essentially will move on if they've got nowhere to create and affordably show their work. So I think the support is great, but something else is like, what can we do to find new spaces or make sure that new spaces are embedded into the development of the future of the city?
Wim, this is like music to my ears. Like, honestly, it's a conversation that comes up a lot. We do have opportunity within the city as it's developing, the Temple Quarter redevelopment, and then St Philip's consultations that are going through, actually really making sure that we're properly engaging in them as a sector, and asking for space to create and space to make noise and to be messy. Humans are social creatures, and we need to gather. We need to come together, and it's that in that coming together, that's where the incubation of ideas comes. It's where that kind of like the percolation of different points of view, enable us to come up with something new. Every single music genre in history started in a small place, in a small town, not in a small town, but in a small venue, with a group of usually marginalized people coming together because they didn't have anywhere else to gather. When you think of Detroit techno, Chicago house, Bristol dubstep, obviously, there's like that small group of people can genuinely put something out into the world that inspires generations to come. So we need to make sure that if we really do champion Bristol as a creative city, that those places are honoured and planned into the future.
Can we
not just saved?
Can we put a tax on the developers that are coming in and taking away these spaces? Is there a way that because so often what I see as well is that money comes into the city, and there's a lot of talk about investing in culture, but in reality, the people that are walking away with the money, there's very little that comes back in a lot of the time. You look at some of the big developments and the amount of money that's going out of the city. We've got a housing crisis and a £50 million deficit, but we've also got one of the fastest growing economies of the cities in Europe. So how does that work? Do you know what I mean? Is there a way that we can think about development in a different way and look at taxing the people that are taking away our culture and reinvesting it somewhere else? Bit radical maybe, but
well, we are
I can come in.
We are trying to do that. So hi, yeah, that is exactly what we're trying to achieve, not only through the strategy, but we're already doing that. We're already in discussion with developers currently around how we kind of secure that investment, either through provision of new cultural spaces or through the provision of funds through either Section 106 or community infrastructure levy. So we've got ways and methods of doing that, kind of through the harnessing the planning process and the permissions process. So, but Elise might want to add to that. But yeah, it's a really good point, but it's something that we are trying to do.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I just think space is so important, you know, and it's not always a tokenistic, oh yeah, we'll you know, invest some culture in I don't know, a sculpture on a roundabout. It's like what we need is, like Carly said, we need spaces that are accessible in terms of, like, yeah, you can make noise there, you can make a mess there, it's not over expensive, it's not, you know, accessible basically.
Yeah, we absolutely recognise that, and I think and we recognise what you've highlighted as a challenge for the city is exactly that. We're losing space for development, and that space is critical in terms of the whole pipeline and the whole kind of ecology of music and the wider cultural sector. So we absolutely recognise it. It's a challenge that we're grappling with sort of on a case by case basis, but we want to be more on the front foot and be more strategic around that so that we can support it going forward. So it will very much feature as part of the cultural strategy. But yeah, thank you for flagging it here. But yeah, we recognise that challenge for the city.
Just to build on that, Tom, and then I'll come to you, is the arts development team are going to run some sessions in September. I just talked to you about the work that we're doing, and we're going to break it down into a couple of different sessions. And one of them is cultural infrastructure and the work that we've been doing. Unfortunately, it's slow, but we're making good progress through the planning and the public art condition. And I'll put in a link to in the chat, but we've got a website, which is Art in the Public Realm, which has a guidance note, which is focused on what we mean by public art. And what in Bristol, we don't just mean sculptures, we mean high quality spaces, event ready spaces, and spaces within development. We've had lots of conversations with developers, and they are really up for supporting culture. We need to work out a way of doing that has the quality, that's equitable, but that also is investing in the city long term. So I'm really up for you coming to some sessions when we're talking about that, and it will be completely embedded into the cultural strategy. Tom, we'll come to you, and anyone else that's got any questions, please raise your hand and we'll come to you. Tom.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, yeah, to be honest, it was just really to back up Wim's point, and though Philip's, you know, hopefully kind of explained a lot of it, which sounds really positive. But yeah, again, referencing motion again, you know, when I first got involved 17 years ago, there was nothing down there. You know, it was a dying, dead industrial state, and the last kind of, you know, the development down there in the last 15 years is crazy, but also logical. You know, of course it is. It's the city centre, and it was a huge amount of space. So, and actually, I don't think anyone bears any malice to Bernard, the landlord, for actually, you know, wanting to sell. You know, that was always his nest egg. So, but herein lies the problem. You know, the Bristol being the top 10 places to live every year for the, you know, the last 10 years in the newspapers and the success of the universities and stuff like that. This is the kind of unforeseen consequences of it. So yeah, I totally back up what Wim's saying. I think I'd love to see and be incredibly supportive of kind of any radical ideas from the council and anything we can do to kind of designate spaces or create spaces and protect spaces, because I think that would really put Bristol on the map as well. In this, you know, same ways like traditionally cities like Berlin have been viewed as well, you know, real kind of at the forefront, and we'd be incredibly supportive of that. And yeah, I think also just made me think, you mentioned See No Evil, which was brilliant, and a legacy of See No Evil, but that was, you know, the council facilitated that. It wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the council, and to be honest, the same, you know, the same idiots that allowed us to use Castle Park for the first time for Love Saves the Day, you know, that was council, you know, supporting us and taking a chance on us and really facilitating something fairly radical, you know, to put a dance music festival in the centre of Bristol, you know, and kind of look at the success of that. So yeah, I mean, you know, I'd love the council to, and would fully support the council to kind of get radical with any of these ideas, definitely.
Thanks, Tom. It's really great to get support.
We hear you as well, and we're up for radical within the realms of the law.
I mean, But you know, when you're thinking about actually like what Bristol's art forms have always been able to push forward, like has always been radical, but we're radically principled at the same time. You know, we're always on the right side of history, and we're always doing things for the right reason, for the benefit of the wider community, to kind of like bring joy through. And that's what I think is so. When we did that first round table around the Bristol Music Fund proposals, I asked everybody to put on a post-it, what does music mean to you in the city? And I've still got one of the post-its that I kept, and there's like a DIY or die that somebody put on it, and I was just like, that's exactly it. You know, like it's Bristol's the sort of city where you can have an idea, you can have a creative idea, you can pull the people together, and you can actually make something happen. But that low barrier to entry is getting harder and harder because of the cost of living, because of the loss of spaces, and you know, it's you can't put midweek nights on for free anymore. You know, it's like really challenging, and that's hopefully some of the problems that we're trying to solve with having a resource like the Bristol Music Fund, is kind of what we're trying to do. I just want to share a couple more slides on the Bristol Music Fund, if that's possible. How do I get this onto the thing? I've just got 2 more slides, just as a bit of a provocation to think about in as you're going through the process of this. Let me go. Where am I? So a question really for you guys to sort of reflect in on yourself is like, when in the future, when we've made this happen, and when Bristol can tell the story of the Bristol Music Fund, what's the story that you will share, and what is the things that you did to help make this possible and help create this resource for the city? And I just want you to kind of, like, you don't have to answer it out loud, but just to sort of like have a little bit of reflection and think about like what it is that you can do to help make this happen. I'm happy to talk to anybody. If you want to chat further about it, you want to offer up some insights or some ideas, or help us make this thing happen. And just this kind of like last, really, like what it is that we're trying to do here. So we believe that the Bristol Music Fund is a transformative proposal for the city. We think that it's going to benefit Bristol for generations by securing that long-term investment, not just for music culture, but for that wider creative economy that surrounds music and nightlife. But we're only going to be able to do this through partnership, through the collective imagination about what's possible when a city really resonates on this conversation. We want to create a framework that other cities can borrow from, so that actually the impacts of our work can have real world change. And I just want to say, Bristol's ready. Let's buy a ticket to the future and let's build it together.
Thanks, Carly. What a brilliant session, and thanks for your amazing work, Carly, and everyone's comments. We're going to share this recording after the session, and we'll look forward to the next culture conversation, which will be next week on the visitor economy. Thanks for everyone for coming, and we'll see you all soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. And thank you, Carly.